Holding on Daf Beis and Beis, which is Be'etzem, the second quarter, rather the first quarter of Daf Beis and Beis. We've already learned 2 quarters on Daf Beis, on Aleph, now on Daf Beis and Beis. We're already holding by the 2 dots. Amar, we learned in the Mishnah that there's one Kriya Shema is Mishah Shekohanim Nichosin Dechom T'Mosam. The Gemara is now going to question that from a Brisa. In the Brisa we learned, or Minu, we learned in the Brisa something seemingly contradictory. Mosai Kohen Shema Ba'avin Kisha Oni Nichnas Le'echol Pitoi B'Melech. The time, again here Chazal gave a different indicator, a siman. The time when Kriya Shema may be said is at the time when the ani eats his meal, it's his bread with salt. That's what the ani eats. We also give over here the deadline. We say Kriya Shema Shalayla was only up to Shah Sha'oimed Lipoter Mitech Sudosai. Rashi explains that the concept here is that, as we spoke previously, that the Torah says b'shachbach, it's man shchiva. So here we have a different variation of what's called shchiva, is that it's not simply when people, generally when the full time when people go to sleep, it's rather the beginning of the Zman when people go to sleep, which is therefore right at the beginning of nightfall, or we'll see exactly when this time is, which is the time when someone eats, when the ani eats his dinner. So the Gemara points out now, say, again, the 2 parts of the Brisa. There's when Kriya Shema begins, when it ends. Now the deadline, that's like I just explained, the concept is completely new. Certainly against the Mishnah that said either the first watch, the Ashmaris, or possibly Chatzos, or even Amud Shachar. Here it's much earlier. That certainly disagrees with the Mishnah. Do we say that also the beginning also disagrees, and there's two contradictory opinions here? So the Gemara answers not necessarily. Low. It's possible to learn that in fact Chazal just spoke in different terms, in different indications, but in fact ani v'koyin chad shiur. It's the same shiur. In other words, the shiur of Kohen eats his trumas, takes a kuchavim. So too, the shiur of ani happens also to be it takes a kuchavim. Just and the bottom line is takes a kuchavim nighttime. Chazal just found different indications in different ways. Again, people didn't have watches, and didn't know time. There's different indications when that time would be. Back to Gemara, 1 second. So now we're going to question this suggestion. We want to equate ani eating his meal with this man kohen. Back to Gemara, we learned in the following brisa. Again, this brisa is another brisa discussing this man of Kriya Shema. And the brisa says as follows: when does Kriya Shema begin? Mishah. Shabnei Adam Nosen Lecho Pitin Ba'avi Shabbat. So it's different mayor, quite similar. In fact, we're going to see we're going to go with the assumption here at this point that Bnei Adam eating their bread on Friday night of Shabbat would be the same time as the ani. That would be assumed. That's another. It's very, very, very. It's too close to be something different to Remeir. And Chachamim Oimrim Mishah Shekanim Zakayin Lechol B'Tzulasoi. And the Chachamim say, go back to what we said before, when the Mishnah, where the Kohanim can eat the Truma. Now we're going to explain how we know that. Now the Chachamim are going to elaborate on how we know that. But I'll just point out already. So we're shortly going to come to the conclusion that it's obviously that Kohanim eating the Truma, which is Tzeitzei Kochavim, that we've already established, is not the same time as Adam when a person eats his meal. So it can't be, so therefore it would be incorrect to say that the Brises do not disagree. We must have two contradictory opinions. Now let's just hear how the Bryce elaborates on this on this man Krishma. Similar davar, and we have a similar davar is Tzes Kochavim. This man of eating truma is Tzes Kochavim, which means it is Tzes Kochavim basically. Now we're going to say, how do we know? How do you know? And basically, we're going to see the logic is we're going to demonstrate how do we know that night begins at Tzes Kochavim, and we know therefore Kriyash Mashalayla will begin at Tzes Kochavim. So we're going to demonstrate that from the words of the Navi. Shenemar says in the Navi, "V'anachnu oisim b'molocha." We are doing a malacha, and yet at the same time we're prepared for war. We're chitzim machzikim b'ramochim. We're holding our arrows. Mi'alois hashachar ad tzesek yichovim. From alois hashachar until tzesek yichovim. So we're doing our work from the morning, first thing in the morning, alois hashachar until tzesek yichovim. Voimer. And even more so, it says in the pasuk. The pasuk continues, "V'hayu lanu alayla mishmar, v'hayu melacha." So the light that we're guarding at night, we're guarding. In the yom, we're doing malacha. So we've established. We'll see in a second why we bring up. The Gemara says, "Why do you bring the second pasuk for? What does that add to explaining when is day, when is night?" It says over here in the pasuk that we did our work until the stars came out. So tzesek kochavim. Now, does that mean that by definition is night? It just says that's when we did our work. I don't know if that's night. Maybe, so people that work overtime, they're working longer. So, to that we prove, they went very late. And they also, maybe they got up early also. So for that we bring a pasuk, continuation of the pasuk, which demonstrates, this designation actually, that we did the work from Alois till night, and then we did our mishmor, we did our watch. That indicates that this is the definition of day. So we've proven. So therefore, since that's the definition of day, and day ends at Tzes Kochavim, and Tzes Kochavim, that's when night begins. So therefore, logic will dictate that this man Kriyashma of night will be Tzes Kochavim. So that's why the opinion of the Chachamim is Tzes Kochavim, and that is precisely the time when the Kohanim can eat the truma. So now the Gemara goes back and demonstrates. So now we go back to this is the question. So what do we see here? If you're going to argue, so you thought that we're going to equate. We're assuming. We're going with the assumption, as we said before, that the time the ani eats in the Be'arim is the same thing. That's very similar statements. It's the same thing. And if you say ani v'koyin, and you want to argue in the previous explanation of the Brisa before that ani v'koyin Shiur, they're both tzesek kochavim. It's not a contradiction. Ani is tzesek kochavim, koyin is tzesek kochavim. If you do that, so do the math, add it up. That means, in effect, what you're saying is that the chachamim hainu Rabbi Meir. So then there's no machlekes. He's saying here in this brisa, the Rabbi Meir says it's when you eat the suda, and the Chachamim say it's kohanim. And if you're saying kohanim and eating the suda at the same exact time, then it's the same thing. There's no machlekes. But here it's clearly presented in the words of Chazal as a machlekes. So that disproves your theory that the ani and koyin are the same thing. El shmami no ani shir l'chud. So koyin, we said we know it's tzesek kochavim. Obviously, the time when the ani eats is not tzesek kochavim. It's another opinion. It's a different opinion of when Zman Kriya Shema starts. We have to understand that. To which the Gemara rejects and says, "Lo, not necessarily. We can get out of that." Ani v'koyin. Again, we'll go back to our previous assumption. No, it's the same thing. The ani eats his bread. Rashi explains, by the way, the ani eats a little bit later because, a little bit earlier than someone else would eat. So the ani, there still has to be, Rashi is assuming, is not pitch black, even though the beginning of the stars come out. It's a zman when the stars come out. It's not. So that's the time when the ani eats his meal. That's ani v'koyin chad shi'urhu. But we proved from the second brayso that that's not the case. No, that's because we differentiate. That's because ani ubnei adam lav chad shi'urhu. Because ani and bnei adam, those are two different times. When people eat their meal Shabbos evening, Avi Shabbos that's not the same as the time as the ani eats his meal, eats his bread every night. So that's stuck at a different time, and that we have to clarify that. Okay, so we do have a different opinion, but it doesn't necessarily disprove our original argument that it's not, that the first brayso is not a contradiction. Ani is his man kriyashma, Chayin is his man kriyashma. It's all tseisik kochavim. So we've been able to solve that problem. Okay, and this is we'll end the quarter. We'll end it here. I'll just say one other ha'ara here. This important thing. So this is the good news. We've explained the Gemara, and we understand that there's no contradiction. But what we see over here, interestingly, is that if you're worried about when Zman Kriya Shema is in the morning, so this we know is a big machlekes hapoiskim. So machlekes the Magen Avram, the Vush, the Gra, and really based on the concept of how we perceive the day. How do we define the day? Does the day begin in alos and end at seis, or does it begin at nates and end at shkia? And now, if it actually begins at alos, the day begins earlier. It's true that the hours will be slightly longer of the day also, because the hours are relative to the time of the day. But it would come out that the Zman Kriya Shema will be a little earlier. So it would create this pashtus. This Gemara would tell us a chumrah that we have to make sure we say Zman. We have to say Kriya Shema Shal Shacharis, not our Shal Shacharis here. Within 3 hours of not nates, not sunrise, but Amud Shachar, the first light. So that would be a mashmoyas like the Magen Avram, and we'll see not in the next quarter, but in the upcoming quarter. We'll see another possible rise in Magen Avram, but like I said, it's a big machlokes hapoiskim. There's this Magen Avram. The Gra has a way out.